Good morning, my Algebra 2 class. I hope you guys had a great day yesterday, and I hope you guys did well with that Desmos assignment and you are ready to move on. So today we're going to move on to lesson 5.4, which is dividing polynomials. So for today's lesson, you're going to need some paper, pencil. I would use a pencil today because if you make mistakes, it's easier going to be to erase those mistakes than it is to use the pen and scratch out, because you may make mistakes today, so that's okay. I'm telling you that in advance, so please make sure you have a pencil and an eraser. You're going to need that for today's lesson. You're going to need a basic calculator, your Algebra 2 textbook. You're going to go to page 304 is where we're going to start, and then you're going to be able to access homework 56. Your homework assignment tonight will be online at Math Excel for School, so please make sure you know your login information for that. So we're going to go ahead and get started. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and switch out this paper real fast. All right, we're going to go ahead and we're going to move to page 304, where we're going to talk about our first example, which is using polynomial long division. So I'm going to write this down, example 1. Using polynomial long division. All right, so I know back when you were in elementary school that you guys did long division, where you had to write out your problem and you had the little division bar and you had your little divisor and your dividend. Well, this is going to be very similar to what we're doing in our polynomial long division. You're going to follow that same process of what you did for multiplying with regular division. So we're going to take a moment and look over that and make sure you understand the basic steps. Okay, so let's go ahead and put our first problem down, which is 4x squared plus 23x minus 16. And we want to divide this by, so we're going to take this whole polynomial here, and we're going to divide it by a binomial, x plus 5. All right, so the very first rule that we have when we are dividing polynomials is we have to make sure that our dividend, that's this guy right here. So I'm going to go ahead and take something and label these pieces so you understand the vocabulary that we're working with. This is called our dividend. This is what we are dividing up. We're going to divvy it up. So when they say, hey, let's divvy up the money or let's divvy up the candy when you come home from trick-or-treating and you're going to divvy up your candy, well, this is your dividend. You're going to divvy this stuff up. This is your divisor. The divisor is what you're dividing by. So if you're going to divvy up this candy among 5 people, you take how much you have to divide up, and you're going to divide it by. So this is your dividend and your divisor. So it's important that we have our dividend must be in standard form. So that's the most important thing. So we have to look for that. So notice we start with the highest degree, which is 2. Then we go to an understood first degree. And then we end with a constant. This means it has no variable. So when you are doing polynomial long division, you have to make sure that you have a place value for every single degree. So if your highest degree is 2, you need a place for the second power, the first power, and then no variable. If you had a degree of 4, you'd have to have to the fourth power, the third power, the second power, the first power, and then no power, which is your constant. So it's important because when we read numbers, there is a huge difference between, let's say, the number 305, 35, and 3005. All 3 of those numbers start with a 3 and end with the 5. But if we put values in between the 3 and the 5, zeros, it completely changes the value. If someone said to you, would you like to have $35, $305, or $3,005, you would much rather have $3,005. So these zeros in here are important because they denote that this is a much larger value than 35. So that's going to be important as we're working with these polynomials. So you will see this as we move throughout the lesson. I'll make sure to give you really good examples of how to understand this. All right, so we're going to go ahead and get started. And we're going to start first by taking our divisor, which is x plus 5, and we're going to write it down here, x plus 5. Because remember, in long division, your divisor goes on the outside. So then you have your division bar, your little thing that looks like this, and then we're going to make our top. I'll go ahead and put the topper after I write my problem so I know how long of a line to make for my topper. All right, so we're starting out with the highest degree, which is to the second power, so 4x to the second power. Then we move to the first power, and I have a positive 23x to the first power. And then we finally, after we go to the first power, we end with our constant. That means we contains no variable. So my constant is a negative 16, so I'm going to go ahead and write that down. Now I'm going to go ahead and put my topper on. That way I can see how long to make my topper. Now with long division, it's going to be very, very, very important that you keep your work lined up, that you're working some kind of a system. You don't want to be like chicken scratch all over the place, otherwise your stuff's not going to line up and you're going to make simple mistakes and it's going to cause you to come to the conclusion of a wrong answer. So I'm going to go ahead and move this dot camera back a little bit because I'm going to need this here. I don't know if that did anything to our video or not. I hope not. But I need to make sure I have space so you guys can see. All right, so I apologize for that disruption there. But I think you guys are pretty good. All right. So now we're going to go ahead and use some of our steps from regular division. So I'm going to put a pretty simple problem over here off to the side. I'm going to put 2, 3, 1, 7. And I'm going to divide it by 5 over here on the side. All right, so in normal division, you would take your first number and it's divisible by the number on the outside. So we ask ourselves, is 2 divisible by 5? And we would say, no, 2 cannot go into 5. So then we look at we put the next two numbers together and we say, is 23? Can we take 23 and divide 5 into 23? We can, but not evenly, and that's okay. So 23 divided by 5 is 4. And we notice we don't put the 4 on top of the 2, we put the 4 on top of the 3 because that's how far we went out in our dividing process. So then we multiply 4 times 5 and we get 20. All right, so now we're going to use that same concept. So when you're doing polynomial long division, the first step, step 1, so let me change a pen up here real fast. I want to keep these colors separated. Step 1, you're going to divide the first term of the dividend by the first term of the divisor. I'll have to squeeze this in here. Sorry. All right, so the step 1 is to divide the first term of the dividend by the first term of the divisor. So let's go ahead and do that real fast. So the first term of our dividend is right here. Our dividend, remember, is the piece that is underneath our division bar. So here is our dividend, 4x squared. So I put that right over here somewhere so you guys out of our view of the other guy. So 4x squared, that's the first term of our dividend. We're going to divide this by the first term of the divisor. Our divisor is on the outside. The first term of our divisor is x. Divide by x. So this is an understood x to the first power. So remember, when we divide with exponents, we subtract these two exponents. So bring this up a smidge a second. I got to bring this up so you guys can see. All right, so there's a 1 here in front of our x that we don't see. So we'll divide our coefficients first. So 4 divided by 1 is equal to 4. Then when we divide with our variables, we keep our base of x, and we subtract our exponents. 2 minus 1. And we know 2 minus 1. 2 minus 1 is 1. So this is 4x to the first power, which is the same thing. It's just 4x, because we do not have to write it to the first power. It's understood. So since we did that, notice that this is x to the first power. And we kind of talked about that if I multiply 5 by 4, I went over 2 places, or to the ones place of a 2-digit number. I have to take this same value and put it over its like term. Since this is to a degree of 1, this is not a degree of 1. So I put it over the degree of 1, which is this 23x. So I put my 4x right here. Now, after we did the process of dividing, that was step 1, dividing, what did we do with this 4 and this 5 to get to this 20? That's right, Jaron. We multiplied. 4 times 5 gives us 20. So now our second step is back down and write step 2 for you. We will multiply by the divisor. All right, so now we're going to take this value, this 4x, and we're going to use our distributive property. We're going to multiply 4x times x, and then 4x times 5. And we'll write our answers right underneath their like terms. So if we do, there's a 1, I'll put a 1 out here so you understand there's an understood 1 that you do not see. So in multiplying, remember you multiply your coefficients first and then your variable second to get your number. When we multiply, we add the exponents. So we're going to multiply 4 times 1 and we'll get 4. We'll multiply x times x and we'll get x to the second. If you divide it correctly, these two should always be the same because you are trying to eliminate them. That's the reason why you took this and you divided it by that, because you're saying what x by to get 4x squared, and that answer is 4x. Now I'm going to take the 4x and multiply it by the positive 5. So again, I'm going to start with my coefficients. 4 times a positive 5 is a positive 20. There is no variable with my 5. My x down. Alright, so now on a regular division over here, after we multiplied 5 times 4, what do you normally do now? That's right, Lily, we subtract. So we do 23 minus 20 and we would get 3. Well, we're going to use the same concept here. Once we divide, we get a 4x. We multiply and we get our new product. We now will subtract, but it is important here that you understand that you're not just subtracting the first two. You are also subtracting the last two. So we got to subtract 4 minus 4. So 4x squared minus 4x squared leaves you with 0. There is nothing here. That's a 0 value. We now have to subtract these guys. So it's important that you pay attention to their signs and you don't just add. You have to subtract. So 23 minus 20. So 23x minus 20x is equal to a positive 3x. So after we subtract, in normal division over here, what do you normally do? That is right, Lainey. We bring down. So bring down the 1. So the same thing is going to hold true in our polynomial division. We will bring down the next term, which is a negative 16. So in normal division, if you would have said 2 minus 2 is 0, do you really need this 0 right here? You're correct. We don't really need that 0 anymore because 0 in front of our values does not mean anything. So I really do not need this 0 either. So then we're going to start our process all over again. Okay, so now we're going to go back and repeat our step 1 all over again. We're going to take the first term. Now our dividend is 3x, and we're going to divide it by the first term of our divisor, which is regular x. I'm going to come over here, bring this back up again on the screen. Okay, so we're going to take our divisor again, which is our dividend, 3x. And we're going to divide it by the first term of our divisor, which is that 1x. So again, remember, we're going to divide the coefficients first. So 3 divided by 1 is 3. X to the, there's a first power here and a first power here. So it's like x to the 1 minus 1. So we're going to go ahead, just so you guys understand what's happening here. 1 minus 1 is x to the 0. Anything raised to the 0 power is equal to 1. So this is the same thing as 3 times 1. Alright, so when you multiply 3 times 1, I'll brighten this up a little bit more, you're going to get 3. So this means if we take 3x and we divide it by 1x, we'll get a positive 3. So again, we're going to write that answer right on top of its like term. Notice this is a constant. This 3 here is a constant. So we're going to put it right on top of this constant of 16. Since it is a positive 3, we're going to write plus 3. If it was a negative 3, you would have wrote minus 3. So now we're going to take and distribute just like we did before. We're going to multiply the 3 times the 1x, and then the 3 times the 5. So 3 times 1 is 3. This has no variable, but we have a variable x. So 3 times 1x is 3x. We're going to write it right underneath. Then we'll multiply 3 times 5 with positive 15. So you're going to write plus 15. Again, if it had been negative, you would have wrote minus. Well, just like before, once we multiply, we take and we subtract. And again, we must subtract each column. So 3x minus 3x is 0. And again, we really do not need this 0. Not important to us. Then we have negative 16. So this is where it gets important that you pay attention that we are subtracting each column. This is not a negative 1. This is not negative 16 plus 15. It is negative 16 minus 15 more. So it's like negative 16, take away 15 more, which makes this a negative 31. So now you notice we have nothing else to bring down. So let's go back to our easy peasy one. So 5 goes into 30 6 times. 5 times 6 is 30. We subtract. We bring down. We know that 5 goes into 17 3 times. 15, subtract. Now we got this 2 left over. Who knows what this 2 is called? That's right, Jessica. This is our remainder. So you would have a remainder of 2. Sometimes you can write your remainder just like this. Or sometimes you can write your remainder as you got a remainder of 2 and you divide it by 5. So your answer could be a couple of things. It could be just 463 remainder 2, or it could be 463 and 2/5. So this is the same thing with polynomial long division. For the most part, they want you to write what you have up here. This is called your quotient. And this is your remainder. So in polynomial long division, what you do is you write down your quotient, 4x plus 3, and then you write your remainder, a little r, remainder, and my remainder was a negative 31. Now, if they don't want you to write it like this, but kind of like that 463 and 2/5, we can put a big old fat or. You can write it 4x plus 3, and because our remainder was negative, minus 31, and we put it over our divisor, which was x plus 5. Both answers are correct. When you're working online, they're specifically going to tell you how they want you to write it, because they will ask you for the remainder. And so make sure you read through the directions. Make sure you look at the directions in blue on how they want you to write your answer. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and try some more of these because it's important that you try more. The more you try, the better you're going to get at this. So we're going to go ahead and bring this page back down a little bit so we can be at the top of our page. Alright, and I'm going to go ahead and clear out this paper. And we're going to move and do another one together because I feel like the more you do, the better that you will be at these. Alright, so I want to have you try some too. So we're going to start out with 3x squared minus 29x. And then plus 56. And we're going to divide this by x minus 7. Alright, so here we have our dividend and we have our divisor. Remember, we check to see is our dividend decreasing in value from highest degree to lowest degree, which means standard form. And make sure we're not missing any values along the way. So our highest degree is 2, then we go to 1, and then we go to 0 because there are no variables. So we have, this is perfect. We don't have any special cases here, no special zero holes. We can write this guy just like we see it. 3x squared minus 29x plus 56. Put our little divisor part and go ahead and fill in our top pi. Now we're going to put our divisor on the outside, x minus 7. Alright, let's see who remembers some of our steps. Alright, so Cornelius, what is our first step? What do we do first? That's correct. We take the first term of the dividend, which is 3x squared. Beautiful. And what do we do with that? That's correct, Coco. We divide by the first term of the divisor, which is 1x. All right, so here we go. So 3 divided by 1 is 3. X squared divided by x to the first is just x to the first. All right, so now I'll take this 3x. Will I put it on top of the 3x squared, above the negative 29x, or above the positive 56? Where do you think we're going to put that, Raina Smith? That's correct. I'm going to put it right here on top of the 29x. So put that 3x right there. So after I write my 3x right there, now what do I do? That's right. I'm going to distribute or multiply this 3x times the x and the 3x times the negative 7. So 3x times the positive 1x makes what, Lainey? That's right, a 3x squared. Beautiful. Now I'm going to do 3x times negative 7. Tyler, what would that be? That's correct, negative 21x. All right, so now I have multiplied. Now what do I do? That's right, Jaron, I subtract. So I'm not just going to subtract the first two columns. I'm going to subtract both columns. All right, so let's go ahead and subtract those then. So 3x squared minus 3x squared, which is 0, which we really don't need. Now here we go. We've got negative 29 minus negative 21. So remember, the minus makes a plus. So this is the same thing as saying negative, I'll put up here, negative 29 minus a negative 21. That's literally what we're doing. So remember that minus is making a positive. So it's like negative 29 plus 21, which is a negative 8x. All right, so now what do we do here? What's the next step that we do, Mackenzie? That's right, we bring down this plus 56. It's a positive 56, we bring down. So once we bring down that positive 56, what's the next thing that we do? That's right, we're going to take the first term of our dividend, which is a negative 8x, and we're going to divide it by the first term of our divisor, which is a positive 1x. All right, so Keon, what is negative 8 divided by a positive 1? You're correct, negative 8. And what happens when you divide x by x? That's correct, Keon. They're going to cross cancel each other out because x to the 0 is 1, and 1 times negative 8 keeps us at a negative 8. So now now, Jeremiah Paul, where will I put this negative 8 in regards to my problem? That's correct, right here on top of that positive 56. So now what will I do with that negative 8, Jeremiah Burton? That's right, I'm going to multiply this negative 8 times the 1x and this negative 8 times this negative 7. All right, so negative 8 times positive 1x is a negative 8x. And a negative 8 times a negative 7 is a positive 56. All right, so we've multiplied. So now, Christian, what do we do? That's right, we're going to subtract. So again, remember we're going to subtract every column. So now we have like a negative 8 minus minus. So remember that's negative 8 minus a negative 8. So remember that minus minus becomes a positive. So negative 8 plus 8. So what's negative 8 plus 8? That's right, it's 0. So we don't have this and we don't need this value. So now we've got 56 minus 56. Well, that's also 0. Won't need that. That means I have no remainder. This tells me that 3x minus 8 is a factor of this polynomial because there is no remainder. So my answer to this problem would just be 3x minus 8. That would be your final answer. Because you do not have a remainder, final answer. All right, we're going to go ahead and we're going to move into your book for a quick second. And we're going to turn to page 308 and we're going to do some problems together. All right, so turn to page 308. All right, here we go. We're going to be on page 308 and we're going to start with problem number 9. Problem number 9 is where we're going to start in your textbook. It has x squared minus 3x minus 40. And it's asking us to divide this by x plus 5. Now it's asking us to use long division. So we're going to have to use long division. Alright, sorry for the disruption with my dogs. They see the people walk down the road and they go a little cray-cray. But that's alright. We still love them. Alright, so here we go. We're going to take our divisor, x plus 5, and we're going to divide it into our dividend, which is x squared minus 3x minus 40. Now notice this is beautiful because we start with the highest degree is 2, then we move down to the first power, and then we move to the no power. So it's like counting down for a rocket ship. 2, 1, nothing. Beautiful. So remember our steps. We're going to take the first term, which is x squared, and we're going to divide it by the first term, which is x to the first power. So we got 1 divided by 1, which is just 1. X squared divided by x to the first is just x. So this is just x. So we're going to put it on top of our like term up here at the top, which is a positive 1x. We'll now do our distributive property. We're going to multiply x times x, and we'll get x squared. We'll multiply x times 5, and we'll get a positive 5x. From here, remember we do what now? That's right, Geo, we subtract. So we're going to go ahead and subtract each column. So 1x squared minus 1x squared is 0. So I'm just not worried about this. If you need to put the 0, you go ahead and put the 0. Now remember, make sure this is not positive 2x. It's not negative 3 plus 5. It's negative 3 minus 5. So negative 3, take away 5 more is a negative 8x. So it's important that, again, you subtract all columns. Otherwise, you will get the wrong answer. So the next thing we do is we break down this negative 40. All right, so now we're going to take our first term underneath, which is this negative 8x. We'll divide it by the first term, which is a positive 1x. So negative 8 divided by positive 1 is negative 8. And x to the first divided by x to the first is x to the 0, which is just 1. And then it still makes it just negative 8. So I take this negative 8 and put it above its like term, so negative 8. We'll now distribute. We'll multiply negative 8 times positive 1x, negative 8x. We'll multiply negative 8 times a positive 5, and we'll get a negative 40. All right, so now, from here, what do we do, AJ? That's right, we subtract. So now we have this negative 8. This does not make negative 16. So please understand, you take the first term, which is negative 8x. We minus the bottom term, which is a negative 8x. So remember, a negative minus a negative is a, that's right, AJ, a positive. So that's negative 8x plus 8x, which is equal to 0. And we do the same thing with these over here. So we take our constant, which is negative 40, and we're going to minus the negative 40. So remember, the minus minus makes it positive. So negative 40 plus 40. So negative 40 plus 40 is also 0. So now I have nothing left on the bottom but zeros. So I really don't need them. So my final answer is just x minus 8. This is my answer. Beautiful. All right, so we're going to go ahead and we're going to do number 11 in your textbook. Number 11. Number 11. So I'm going to move this up a little bit so we can see this in view. I'm going to start here with number 11 in your textbook, which is x cubed. Ooh, we get to start with x cubed. I like that, a degree of 3. All right, so x cubed plus 3x squared minus x plus 2. And we're going to divide this all by x minus 1. All right, so let's look at this guy. This time our highest degree is not 2, it is 3. So we get a countdown. 3, 2, 1, 0. Means there's no variables. This is in perfect standard form. There are no empty gaps or holes. So we're going to go ahead and write down our dividend. So x to the third plus 3x squared minus x plus 2. Put our woo-woo. We'll put our divisor out here, x minus 1. All right, so we're going to still follow the same rules. They're not changing. We'll take the first term, which is x cubed, right up here so you guys can see it, and we'll divide it by the first term of the divisor, which is x. So I'll go ahead and put our little 1 so you can see the value that there are 1s in front of those coefficients. So 1 divided by 1 is 1. There's a 1 here at this x that we don't see. So then this would be x to the 3 minus 1, which is 2, which is the same as just plain old x squared. All right, so now this is an x squared. So I'm not going to write it on top of x. I'm going to put it on its like term, which is x squared. So right here on top of my x squared. So now I'm going to multiply 1x squared times 1x. So 1 times 1 is 1. X squared times x is x to the third. Then I'm going to multiply 1 times negative 1, which is a negative 1, and x squared is all we have. So I'll put that 1 there in case you need to see that. So from this step, what do we do now? That is correct, AJ. We subtract. So remember, we'll subtract the first two, and then we will subtract the last two. Not just 3 minus 1, but 3 minus negative 1. So it's important, again, we do not forget that. I can't stress that enough. So x cubed minus x cubed is 0. 3 minus minus. So I'm going to put that over to the side again so you remember. 3 minus a negative 1. So it's the same as 3 plus 1, which is equal to 4. So this becomes a positive 4x squared because those are the like terms. All right, so we're going to go ahead, and then we bring down our next term, which is a negative x. And we start the process all over again. We take the first term of the dividend, which is 4x squared, and we divide it by the first term of the divisor, which is 1x. 4 divided by 1 is 4. X to the second divided by x to the first is just x. So we're going to put that 4x right here on top. So plus 4x. So now we're going to distribute. 4 times 1 is 4. X times x is x squared. Because remember, we don't really need this 0. Then we're going to multiply 4 times negative 1, which is negative 4. And then we have our x. Alright, so what do we do now, Gabe? That's right, we subtract. So again, we're going to subtract and then subtract. So 4 minus 4 leaves me with 0. So 4x squared minus 4x squared is nothing. There's a negative 1 here we don't see, so that's negative 1. I'll put it over here, negative 1 minus negative 4. So remember, this minus minus makes a positive. So negative 1 plus 4, which is a positive 3. So a positive 3x. We'll put this back. Positive 3x. We will now bring down our final term, which is a positive 2. And then we start our process all over again. We don't need this 0. So we'll take the first term in the dividend, which is 3x. And we'll divide it by the first term in the divisor, which is a positive 1x. 3 divided by 1 is 3. And then we have x to the first divided by x to the first is x to the 0, which is equal to 1. And 3 times 1 is just 3. So it's a positive 3, so I put plus 3. All right, so now to distribute and multiply 3 times 1x, which makes 3x. And then 3 times negative 1, which is negative 3. So from here, what do we do? Lainey. That's right, Lainey. From here, we're going to go ahead and subtract. So remember, we subtract all columns. So 3x minus 3x is 0. We got a positive 2 up here, minus a negative 3 down here. Remember, the minus minus makes a positive 3. So it's like 2 plus 3, which is a positive 5. And we really don't need this 0. So now my final answer would be x squared plus 4x plus 3. And this guy right here, that's my remainder. He's a positive 5. So I have a remainder of 5. This would be my final answer. All right, we're going to do another one on this page. We're going to go ahead and jump down, and let's do number 16. Number 16. All right, so I'm going to go ahead and move this paper back down into view. And that's going to look crazy trying to make you seasick. All right, we're going to do number 16. All right, so here we go. We're going to pick number 16 to do. All right, we got x cubed minus 13x minus 12. I'm going to take that and we're going to divide it by x minus 4. All right, this is number 16 in your textbook. All right, so look at this guy. The highest degree we see is 3. But if we start to count down, we got 3. There's no 2. Then it goes to 1, then 0. We're missing the 2 value in here, the x to the second power. So when we go to write our dividend down here, we have to account for the fact that we have nothing raised to the second power. Like a placeholder, like we talked about with the number 35. If we add a 0 in between the 3 and 5, it changes the value. So we're going to start our highest degree, which is x to the third. Because we do not have an x to the second power, we're going to go ahead and put a plus 0 x to the second power. So this is going to be our placeholder showing that we do not have anything raised to the second power. Then we'll continue on with our minus 13x to the first power, then our minus 12, which is our constant because there's no x at all. Then we'll go ahead and put our dividing bar and put our divisor on the outside. Okay, so we're going to go ahead and follow our rules. We're going to take our first term, which is x to the third power, and we're going to divide it by our first term of our divisor, which is x to the first power. So again, I'll put these 1 so you guys can see. 1 divided by 1 is 1. X to the third divided by x to the first is x to the 3 minus 1, which is 2. So this is just plain old x squared. So we're going to write this. This is the reason why. So if you'd not made this, not only have you not made this placeholder, you would have somewhere to put your like terms on top of one another. So it's important that we have that value. You'd have been like, I don't see an x squared. Where am I supposed to put it? So it's important we have those placeholders. So we're going to go ahead and put that 1x squared right here on top of this 1x squared. So here's our 1x squared on top of our 0x squared. So we're going to go ahead and distribute 1x squared times 1x is a 1x cubed. All right, now we're going to multiply this x squared times this negative 4, and we'll get negative 4x squared. All right, so from here, Jeremiah Burton, what do? You're correct. We're going to go ahead and subtract. So we're going to subtract each individual column. So 1x cubed minus cubed is 0x cubes. So that goes. And we'll subtract here. 0 minus negative 4. So remember, the minus makes a plus. So it's like 0 plus 4x squared. Remember, we do not need this 0. So now next, Alex. That's right, Alex. We bring down our minus 13x. All right. So now we're going to take our first term, which is our first term, which is x to the first. So first term divided by first term. 4 divided by 1 is 4. X to the second divided by x to the first is just x to the first, or x. We'll put it above its like term, which is at negative 13x. We're going to stick it right up here. We're going to go ahead and distribute. 4 times 1 is 4, and x times x is x to the second. Then we'll distribute. 4x times negative 4 is negative 16x. All right, Alex, what do we do next? That's right, we subtract. So 4x squared minus 4x squared is 0. Negative 13 minus negative 16. So a minus makes a positive. So negative 13 plus 16 is a positive 3x. And we'll bring down that negative 12. All right, so now what do, Lily? That's right. We'll take the 3x, which is our first term, and divide it by the 1x, which is our first term. So dividend over divisor. So 3 divided by 1 is 3, and x divided by x just cross-cancel each other out because they become x to the 0, which is the same as 1, which is the same as 3 times 1, which is just 3. So we take this 3, we put it on top of our constant, negative 12. It's positive 3, so I put plus 3. Now we'll distribute. 3 times x is 3x. We'll put it right underneath it here. So again, we don't need the 0. Then 3 times negative 4, which is negative 12. And from here, what do we do again, Alex? That's right, we subtract. So 3x minus 3x is 0. And then negative 12 minus negative 12. Remember, minus makes a plus. So negative 12 plus 12, which is also 0. And we don't need zeros. So our final answer, pull this up a little bit, is our quotient, x squared plus 4x plus 3, final answer. All right, So now we're going to go ahead and move on to our next portion of this lesson. All right, we're going to go ahead and move on to example 2. So we're going to flip back to page 305. And this is example 2. And this example is called checking factors. All right, so for this example, we're going to check to see if a factor that we are going to divide by is indeed a factor of the polynomial. So we're going to go ahead and start with the one they give us in the textbook, which is 3x to the 4th minus 4x cubed plus 12x squared plus 5. This is a polynomial that they give us. I want to know, is x squared, so they're saying, is x squared plus 1 a factor? So here they want to know is if I take this polynomial and I divide it by x squared plus 1, will I get a remainder of 0? So if it is a factor, then the remainder will be 0. That's how you will know if what you're dividing by or your divisor is a factor of your dividend, is if the remainder will be a 0. So let's do it with something easy instead of something hard. For example, if we take the number 15 and we divide it by 5, we know that 15 divided by 5 is 3. So 3 times 5 is 15. When we subtract, we get a remainder of 0. This means that 5 is a factor of 15, because when I divide 15 by 5, I get a 0 remainder. So that's what they're asking of us. So remember, when we start to divide these, we have to make sure we go in standard form, and we leave 0 spaces for any value that's left out. So for example, we have 4x to the 4th, to the 3rd, to the 2nd. We're missing x to the 1st, so we'll have to make sure we compensate for that down below when we rewrite it. So let's go ahead and rewrite that. We got our 3x to the 4th. We have our negative 4x to the 3rd. We have our positive 12x squared. But we do not have any x to the 1st, so we got to show that. I always just put plus 0x squared. And then we put our constant of 5. Oh, not x squared, I'm sorry, x to the 1st. I meant to put a 1. 1. All right, so now we got 4, 3, 2, 1, and no x, no variable. All right, we're going to put our dividing sign or divisor bar, as you want to call it. And then we're going to go ahead and put our divisor on the outside of x squared plus 1. All right, so we're going to go ahead and follow our same rules. I'm going to slide this up a little bit so we have room. So we'll take our first term, which is 3x to the 4th in our dividend. We're going to go ahead and divide it by the first term in our divisor, which is a 1x squared. So we'll divide. 3 divided by 1 is 3. X to the 4th divided by x to the 2nd is x to the 4 minus 2, which is 2. So I'm going to go ahead and put it way down here over our x squared, because that's important. So like terms over like terms, so 3x squared way up here. All right, so now we're going to go ahead and we're going to distribute. 3x squared times x squared is 3x to the 4th. We're going to multiply 3x squared times 1 is 3x squared. It's an x squared, so we need to put it under the x squared, not under the x cubed. So it's a positive 3x squared. Notice you don't have an x cubed value. So I'm going to just go ahead and pay another. I have nothing to the x cubed here. There was an empty hole there when I multiplied. I only had to the 4th power and then again to the 2nd power. So now we're going to go ahead and subtract just like we've been doing. So 3x to the fourth minus 3x to the fourth is nothing. They cross cancel each other out. So bam, bam, they cross each other out. Negative 4x cubed, take away no x cubes, is negative 4x cubed. 12x squared minus 3x squared is a positive 9x squared. And just like in our previous portion that we were doing today's lesson, we're going to bring down the next term, which is a positive 0x. So we're going to start the same process all over again. The first term of our dividend, which is negative 4x cubed, and we'll divide it by the first term of our divisor, which is a positive 1x squared. So we're going to go ahead and divide. Negative 4 divided by 1 is negative 4. X to the third divided by x to the second is the same as x to the 3 minus 2, which is 1, so just 1x to the first power. So I'm going to put it right over its like term, that's 0x. So 4x. Oh, negative 4x. Sorry, guys. This is supposed to be a negative. That's why you got to use pencil, unlike Miss Hebert here. All right, so we're going to distribute negative 4x times a positive x squared is a negative 4x cubed. And then negative 4 times positive 1 is negative 4x. So again, we got to put it under its like term. We multiply. We had no x squared. So we had no x squared there. We're going to go ahead and do our subtraction. All right. So negative 4x cubed minus minus, remember, makes that positive. So these guys cross cancel each other out. 9x squared minus 0x squared is 9x squared. 0 minus minus. Remember, the minus minus makes a plus. So 0x plus 4x is 4x. And then we'll bring down our constant of plus 5. We'll follow the same pattern. Take our first term, which is 9x squared, and we'll divide it by our first term, which is 1x squared. So 9 divided by 1 is 9. X squared divided by x squared. Cross cancel each other out, making x to the 0, which is 1. And 9 times 1 is still 9. So it's a positive 9, so plus 9. We'll now distribute. 9 times x squared is 9x squared. 9 times 1 is 9, so we'll put it under the constant of 5. It's a positive 9. And again, notice we didn't have anything to the x. So we had 0 x's. And we'll go ahead and subtract. 9x squared minus 9x squared cross cancel each other out. 4x minus 0x is 4x. And 5 minus 9 is a negative 4. Did we get a remainder of 0? You're correct. We did not get a remainder of 0. We have a remainder. So this means that x squared plus 1 is not a factor because we did not get a remainder of 0. So in order to be a factor, we must have a 0 remainder. All right, we're going to try a couple now by ourselves. All right, so we're going to go ahead and be on page 308. And we're going to do numbers 17 and 18. So 17 and 18. So we'll start with 17, and then we'll do 18. So the 17 and 18 are going to each use the same polynomial, which is x cubed plus 4x squared plus x minus 6. So each polynomial, or each problem we're going to do, is going to use the same polynomial as our dividend. So we're going to take this dividend right here. All right, so we want to find out, is this polynomial, if I divide it by the given divisor, would it be a factor? So our given divisor for this problem is x plus 1. So they're wanting to know, if I divide this by x plus 1, will I get a remainder of 0? If I do, then yes, it's a factor. If I don't, then no, it is not a factor. So let's look at our polynomial. Let's see, first of all, if it's written in standard form, and do we have a slot for everybody? So highest degree is 3, then it goes to 2, then it goes to 1, and then it goes to nothing. So beautiful. This is in the correct order, so all I have to do is copy this down. So x cubed plus 4x squared plus 1x minus 6. We can divide this all by our divisor of x plus 1. Alright, so again, we're going to take our first term, which is x to the third, and divide it by our first term, which is x to the first. So 1x cubed divided by 1x is 1x squared. So I'm going to put this x squared over the like term, x squared. Then we'll go ahead and multiply. X squared times x is x cubed. Then we'll multiply x squared times 1, and we'll get 1x squared. From here, we're going to go ahead and just subtract. So 1x cubed minus 1x cubed cancels each other out because it makes 0. 4x squared minus 1x squared makes 3x squared. We'll bring down our next term, which is a positive x. We'll now take our first term, which is 3x squared. We'll divide it by our first term, which is a positive 1x. So 3 divided by 1 is 3. X squared divided by x to the first is x. So we'll take this 3x, we'll put it on top of its like term, so we'll put a plus 3x up here. Then we're going to go ahead and distribute. So 3x times x is 3x squared. 3x times 1 is a positive 3x. Now we're going to go ahead and subtract. So 3x squared minus 3x squared is 0, so they cross cancel each other out. 1x, so 1, minus 3x is a negative 2x. So we bring down our minus 6. We're going to go ahead and take our first term, which is negative 2x. We're going to divide it by our first term, which is a positive 1x. So negative 2 divided by 1 is negative 2, and x divided by x cross cancel each other out. So I'll put my negative 2 up top, and then I distribute. Negative 2 times 1x is negative 2x. Negative 2 times positive 1 is a negative 2. All right, we're going to go ahead and subtract. So negative 2 minus negative 2, so minus minus makes a positive, so that's like negative 2 plus 2, which is 0, so these guys cross cancel each other out. Then we have negative 6 minus 2, so that minus minus makes a plus, so negative 6 plus 2 is a negative 4. Is our remainder 0? You're correct, Lainey, it is not. So this means that x plus 1 is not a factor. So x plus 1 is not a factor because we did not get a remainder of 0. All right, we're going to try one more. We're going to go ahead and try number 18. Number 18. All right, so let's start there. Number 18, again, we're going to start with the same polynomial or dividend that we just had a second ago, which is x cubed plus 4x squared plus x minus 6. But this time, they want us to find out, is x plus 2 a factor? So we're checking to see, is x plus 2 a factor? So to do that, we've got to divide this by x plus 2 and see, do we get 0 for a remainder? So we're going to follow the same steps. So what's our first step, Mackenzie? Correct. We take the first term and divide it by the first term. So what is x cubed divided by x to the first, Mackenzie? That's right. It's x to the second. So we're going to put that x to the second right here on top of our x to the second. Great job. All right. So now, Jeremiah Burton, what do I do next? That's right. I'm going to take this x squared and multiply it by the x and the 2 using the distributive property. So x squared times x is what, Jeremiah? That's right, x cubed. X squared times 2 is what, Jeremiah? That's right, 2x squared. All right, so now what do I do from here, Lainey? That's right, I subtract. So Lainey, what is x cubed minus x cubed? You're right, 0. So they cross each other out. Beautiful. Lainey, what's 4x squared minus 2x squared? That's right, it's 2x squared. All right, Lily, what do I do next? That's right, Lily, I bring down my plus x. So now, Lily, what would I do next? You're correct. I take that 2x squared and I divide it by my first term out here, 1x. So, Lily, what is 2x squared divided by 1x? You're right, Lily, it's 2x. I'm going to put it right up here, plus 2x, because it's a positive 2x. All right, Geo, so now what do I do? That's right, I'm going to multiply 2x times x, and I get what, Geo? That's right, 2x squared. Then I do 2x times 2, so Geo, what would that be? That's correct, 4x. All right, so now what do I do, Jaren? That's right, Jaren, I'm going to go ahead and subtract. So, Jaren, what is 2x squared minus 2x squared? That is correct. It's 0, so they cross-cancel each other out. All right, Jaren, what is 1x? So put that 1 here. 1x minus 4x. That is right, 3x. Then what do I do from here, Raina Smith? That's right, I bring down that minus 6. So now what I do next, Raina? You're right, I take that 3x, and I'll divide it by the 1x. So, Raina, what is 3x divided by 1x? That is right, it is 3. So where will I put this 3? That's correct, Raina, right up here, plus 3. Fantastic. So now what do I do, Christian? That's right, I'm going to multiply. 3 times x is 3x. Beautiful. All right, now I do 3 times 2. You're correct, is 6. Fantastic. All right, so now what do I do, Tyler? That's right, I subtract. Beautiful job. So now what is 3x minus 3x? You're correct, it is 0. And what is negative 6 minus 6? That is also 0. So I just end up with a 0 remainder. So is x plus 2 a factor then? You are correct. X plus 2 is a factor, Cornelius. So x plus 2 is a factor. It's a factor because we had a remainder of 0. Fantastic. All right, that is the end of today's lesson. So online you have some problems to solve, so please make sure you check that out and have a great day.